FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
I fear that he would do more administrative in-runs around Congress, more abuses of authority with his executive power, and would create even more debt. And we only have a 2 to 3 year window, according to experts, if you listen to what Paul Ryan says. Yeah. And that is, I can't emphasize how grave this situation is. We're not just being sensationalistic. We're not being hyperbolic. The future of the country turns on this election.
That is absolutely correct. And setting the tone for this election is what's happening in Wisconsin. And we're going to bring David Limbaugh on here. He is the author. This is such a great book of The Great Destroyer, Barack Obama's War on the Republic. And David, first of all, I have to tell you, you had me up till 3:45 this morning reading your book because it was so good and so infuriating.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry to wreak such displeasure in your life, but really, really appreciate you having me on and you saying that.
Well, of course. And this, you have it absolutely right. This book, by the way, this is like this is the clearinghouse for everything that this president has done in terms of really kind of deconstructing the country as we know it. And your previous book, Crimes Against Liberty, it's sort of like a companion piece with your previous New York Times bestseller, Crimes Against Liberty. And both of these, I mean, they really just showcase, every little thing that President Obama has done in order to kind of reverse constitutional liberty in the United States.
Exactly, and that's what I intended to do, is to chronicle Obama's misdeeds and abuses of power and destruction of the Republic with Crimes Against Liberty and through the time I completed it, which was about the summer of 2010. And with this book, I intended kind of a sequel to take us forward from where I left off in Crimes Against Liberty and make it a comprehensive encyclopedic chronicling of everything he's done. And I think it's kind of amusing. I put so much in this book, so much research, so much time, and crammed as much into it as I could at the same time hopefully making it as readable as I could. By the time I was done, I talked to my editor, Jack. I said, there's a section of stuff I didn't have room for. I got to get this in. He said, well, you still got to do an introduction. I'm going to make you do it. I said, okay. Well, then I'm going to cram it in there. I'm cheating. I'm going to put a bunch of bullet points in there so I don't leave anything out. No stone unturned. So if you'll look at the introduction, it's not like an ordinary introduction. I just cheat so I can get the rest of the indictment, the bill of particulars against him, because I wanted to fulfill my goal of making this a comprehensive treatment.
I think this is the ultimate manual on his presidency. I mean, I really do. I'm at page 163, and I stopped right above situational truth. That's where I am now. I've read about crony capitalism. And, you had mentioned last night, you had discussed that how, really we could either choose two paths. We can either go the way of Greece, or we can go back to the way that the framers intended for our country to operate. And this election is important, and what's happening in Wisconsin sets the stage for that. And you get into a lot of what is really related to Wisconsin. I mean, for instance, you talk about how the president basically bypassed Congress and appointed 3 individuals, recess appointments when Congress wasn't in recess, to the National Labor Relations Board. I mean, this is all, it really, it ties into Wisconsin as well, what are your thoughts on all of that, by the way?
Yeah, well, I totally agree with this segue into current events. Obama is a radical Marxist type of thinking guy where he views everything as a class struggle, the working man. And by the way, you and I don't work. It's only if we have a union card are we working.
Right.
So he wants to stack the deck in favor of union people against employers. They have an adversarial relationship. As you said, he appointed 3 people to the NLRB through recess appointment in what has typically been a bipartisan process. He made it extremely radically partisan, but he set up his own solicitor in the Labor Department, appointee, had a long history of adversarial behavior in state government, and she's done the same thing in the federal government in stacking the decks against employers, encouraging suits against employers. And that's what they're trying to force against the people's will, like they did with Obamacare. The public is going away from unions, especially public sector unions. And now you see what Obama did with Governor Walker. Mm-hmm. He sent his community organizers in there, despite what the public's will was, and despite how great a job Governor Walker's done to turn this economy around, and just wants to give the people freedom. And Obama, instead of clamping down as the leader of the Republic and saying, you guys on our side protest peacefully. Don't threaten people's lives. Don't send them out of the state. He did the exact opposite. He even sent them out of state. So his federal thugs could come in and community organize this recall election. And so this guy, Obama, truly is a thug writ large at federal level. I'm sorry if that goes against the grain for people who want to say that he's a likable guy. Well, I don't think he's a likable guy when he acts unpresidential, when he says that Republicans want dirty air and dirty water. They want to starve people who don't have the means. He thinks people make too much profit. I'm not thinking he's real likable. We should get in the back seat, and I don't believe the polls that say he is. Let's look at his record. It's a miserable failure. He's trying to divide us on the basis of race, class, and gender. He's taking us into national bankruptcy, and he's dismantling and disarming us unilaterally on the national defense side. I think it's horrendous what's going on.
And one of the things that you get into in great detail in this book is you talk about how the president is disarming us, nationally with foreign policy and so on and so forth. But he's declared war basically on the states and the 10th Amendment. And you discuss how even just the drugs that states, when they have the death penalty, just like the drugs that they use, how he's basically imposing some sort of regulations and withholding these drugs for states to be able to carry out death penalties and immigration. You chronicle immigration as well, and how you wrote our own government has become our enemy.
Yes, and he's conducted a war mostly on red states on issues like immigration, voter ID, and abortion, federal funding for abortion, and the Planned Parenthood and all that stuff. Well, with the voter ID, how dare states have the audacity to demand that people who want to vote have to prove who they are with some documentation? How discriminatory. And he goes to the United Nations and submits our laws for review by the Human Rights Council, which is notoriously anti-American. And so he submits Arizona's law to be reviewed by the Human Rights Commission at the UN. Imagine how anti-American and destructive that is, and how anti-state sovereignty and how anti, as you said, 10th Amendment it is. And lambasts conservatives before the United Nations. I mean, this guy, I've never seen anything like this. We have never experienced leftism on a presidential scale like this. Even Bill Clinton had the decency to move to the center opportunistically, albeit. At least he did. This guy doubles down with every increased failure. When he fails with Solyndra, he doubles down and demands more money for projects. Same thing with high-speed rail. Same thing with stimulus and stimulus junior on his jobs bill. There's no end. There's no way to stop this guy other than November.
There are two chapters in this book, and they're chapter 2, and I think it's chapter 3 as well, that I found so far of what I read the most infuriating and unsettling, because you get into the president's war on the disobedient, which is basically anyone who would disagree with his policies,
Yep.
and you go into how he looks at the public as, business as enemy number one. You also get into the civility. These tactics, I don't even think that this is soft fascism. I mean, this is fascistic, what you're outlining in here.
Yeah, and I really do think, speaking of fascism, I really think this Obama is a hybrid between a Marxist and a fascist, a socialist, whatever. I do know that he doesn't like capitalism. He can say all he wants he's a fierce advocate of the market, but how stupid does he expect us to believe? Pretend we are. But when he gives his Osawatomie speech, notice he glorifies government's intervention in the market. If we had left it alone to capitalism, we'd not have ended up with the America we have. He doesn't understand profit motive. He thinks it's evil. He doesn't understand the necessity of the profit motive in production and incentivizing businesses to create and take risks. And he doesn't understand how to make payroll. And so he glorifies government's intervention, without which we couldn't have done it, and he couldn't have succeeded in this country. And he acts like conservatives want unbridled free enterprise, that we wouldn't even hem in businesses on the basis of the rule of law and antitrust. And it's so untrue. We're not anarchists. We're not all the libertarians to the point that we don't even believe in law, and we don't condone cheating, and we're not corporatists in that sense. We just want the free market to operate. But right now it's smothered. He's got his boot on our throats, on the throats of entrepreneurs. There's no entrepreneurial spirit. There is an entrepreneurial spirit waiting to be unleashed, but they're scared to death to hire because of the onerous regulations, and specifically with Obamacare, the surveys have been done that's showing people are sitting on the sidelines waiting. And even business experts, business people that have talked about it, have been interviewed, saying this guy hates business. And entrepreneurs are afraid to hire, and they won't hire because of the climate of uncertainty and oppression that exists against private enterprise.
After cataloging everything that this president has done in office, what do you see the country looking like? Say, God forbid we have an Obama victory in November 2012. Say that we don't get control of the Senate, that it ends up being exactly as the setup is now. From everything that you've seen, what and how this would trend, what do you see the country looking like the year after he's inaugurated for the second time?
Well, he would view that as a mandate and an affirmation of what he's doing, and so imagine what he's doing now when he knows it's against the grain of the country and his chances for re-election. Imagine if he had a license to do more, in his view. There's no telling the kind of abuses and end runs of administrative power he would implement. But beyond all that, we as I said on that clip, we have a 2 to 3 year window to restructure our entitlements, which are growing at the pace of about $10 trillion a year. They're now at about $99-point-something trillion. Paul Ryan says, the experts, the bond markets and all, say 2 to 3 years window. We can't wait. It's not like we can put a Band-Aid on it for 10 years, after which the curves go dramatically upward, vertical. No, that's what Geithner said. We're going to wait. We put a Band-Aid on this, or we got it stabilized, is the term he used, over the next 10 years. There's not that much difference between our plan and your plan. And Ryan said, after that, it goes directly vertical, and he says, well, we'll work on that. No. First place, there is no Band-Aid. Between now and 10 years, there's a $9.5 trillion increase in our debt. He increases the debt an average of almost $1 trillion a year, according to CBO's scoring. Even his own scoring, his own budget people in the 10-year budget he last submitted say that they'll increase the debt, not the deficit, the debt by 7.5 or something trillion. That's 7.5. CBO says almost 10. That's $1 trillion a year. It's unsustainable, even apart from entitlements. But then entitlements, icing on the cake, we're done. We are done. We're Greece, and that means we won't have the kind of liberty and prosperity that we've enjoyed, that you and I grew up in, that our parents and grandparents bequeathed us. And so we're going to be stewards to our children of a complete mess. And by the way, when we can't pay our bills, we are going to not be able to defend ourselves, and we're already in a precarious position now. And guess what happens if we can't defend ourselves? These other nations who Obama claims hates us will be taking advantage of us.
Absolutely. Well, this is I can't let you laid it out perfectly right there. This book, David Limbaugh's The Great Destroyer, Barack Obama's War on the Republic. This is a must-buy. This book is a must-have. David, I'm gonna probably read this whole thing before the week's end. I won't get any sleep, but I'll have read it, and it'll be great. Thank you so much.
You know, I'm a big fan, so thank you. It was an honor to be on.
Well, it's an honor to have you on, and thanks for being such a great conservative and good friend. David, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.